7 Johnny Carson guests who lost it on live TV. For 30 years, Johnny Carson was America's favorite guy to watch at night. Behind his warm smile and relaxed style, though, he was a super careful pro who wanted total control over his show. Most stars got the hidden rules of The Tonight Show. Be funny, be fun to talk to, but always let Johnny lead. Some guests totally missed those signs. They came to plug movies, albums, or just themselves. But whether it was from too much drinking, big egos, or just bad judgment, these stars crossed a line that went from making the audience laugh to leaving them quiet and shocked. What makes these blow-ups so interesting isn't just the train wreck fun of seeing famous people fall apart on national TV. It's how Carson tried hard to keep things under control. The tight smile that didn't reach his eyes, the quick, nervous look at Ed McMahon, the desperate tries to save parts of the show as they went totally off track. While tons of stars had boring visits on Carson's couch, these 7 made moments so awkward, so over the line, and so against the show's usual nice vibe that they've become famous in late-night TV history. From a huge actress who turned a plug visit into a yelling fight to a loved comedian who crashed the show without asking to the top pop star who made America's calmest host look really thrown off. These are the guests who didn't just bug Carson. They stomped all over his buttons while America watched in shock. Let's start with the material girl herself, whose 1987 visit swapped Carson's usual smart jokes for something way more spicy than NBC's censors were ready for. Lie. But what am I wearing? Yeah, if I went into a lingerie shop and I wanted to buy one of those for somebody. Come on, not for me, but for somebody, they'd probably, what would I call it? I mean, it's called a bouilleur, a bouilleur. 1. Madonna, the material girl gets too material. When Madonna showed up on The Tonight Show in 1987, she wasn't the worldwide star yet, but she was getting there fast, riding the success of her Who's That Girl tour and getting famous for pushing limits. What Carson and his team thought they'd get was a fun but proper chat. What they got was totally different. Madonna came out wearing what you could kindly call lingerie-style clothes. Black lace, fishnet stockings, and an attitude that showed she wasn't planning to follow Carson's rules. From the second she sat on the famous couch, she went from guest to troublemaker. I remember the studio going totally quiet when she walked out, said an NBC page who was there that night. This wasn't the normal Tonight Show outfit. This was Madonna bringing her stage act to late-night TV, and you could feel the producers freaking out. Instead of joining Carson's usual easy back-and-forth talk, Madonna right away took over, flirting hard with the host, making sexy hints, and on purpose pushing religious and sex topics that were still not okay on network TV in the 1980s. When Carson tried his usual light, dirty jokes, Madonna answered with straight-out comments that made the host clearly look for a way to change the subject. His famous calm face broke a few times as Madonna talked about her sex life in ways that had the censors ready to hit the delay button. Johnny laughed, but he never asked her back, said a long-time Tonight Show producer. What people at home didn't see was Carson's reaction in breaks. He wasn't mad. Johnny hardly ever showed mad, but he was clearly bugged that she'd taken over the part and put him in the weird spot of trying to calm things down. The audience split by age. Younger people loved Madonna's rebel vibe. Older people were shocked by her on-purpose breaking of late-night manners. What nobody argued was that Madonna had made exactly the spicy moment she wanted, using Carson's show as her stage while totally ignoring its usual feel. While the visit helped Madonna's rep for pushing limits, it pretty much ended her link with Carson. Even with many albums and movies after, she never came back to his couch, making her one of the few big stars of that time who got quietly banned from the show, not for saying too little but for saying too much. Carson's cigarette box. I broke his box. I broke Carson. 2. Don Rickles. the night the insult comic went too far. Don Rickles and Johnny Carson had one of late night's best friendships. Rickles was a regular guest whose visits usually went a loved way. He'd roast Carson hard. Carson would laugh the loudest, and audiences loved their vibe. But one famous night in 1976, Rickles broke more than just Carson's joke flow. He broke a real piece of TV history. The problem started during Rickles' planned visit the night before. While Carson was off stage for a bit, Rickles sat in the host's chair. Not weird for a guest to do in a break. What was weird was next. Rickles broke the cigarette box on Carson's desk, a special gift from NBC that Carson had for years. The next day, with Rickles not booked, but shooting his sitcom CPO Sharky on a close NBC stage, Carson showed the broken cigarette box and jokingly complained about Rickles being careless. What happened next shocked even long-time NBC workers. Out of nowhere, Rickles ran onto the set in full Navy outfit from his sitcom, cutting into Carson mid-part. For the next few minutes, TV watchers saw an unplanned, no-script Rickles storm as he grabbed control of the show. "It was funny until it wasn't," said a camera guy who worked that day. At first, everyone laughed. The surprise crash-in, Rickles in costume, his fast jokes, but there was a point where you saw Johnny's face change. Rickles wasn't just doing his normal roast. He was really taking over the show. Rickles didn't just cut in. He took charge, grabbing Carson's desk, yelling across the set, and throwing non-stop roasts that went past his usual fun pokes. While Carson kept his pro-cool on air, laughing and going along, backstage people said he was truly mad about the line crossing. "Johnny really guarded the show's setup and pro-feel," said a former Tonight Show producer. "Even with buddies like Rickles, there were limits. Coming on without notice in costume and running things wasn't just breaking the wall. It was smashing the whole way the show worked." The part became famous exactly because it showed something rare: Carson losing control of his own show for a bit. Though the two stayed friends, insiders said Carson was cooler to Rickles for months after, a quiet but real reaction from TV's calmest host. What made the thing stand out was that it came from Rickles, not a new limit pusher or troubled star, but one of Carson's most trusted regular guests. It showed that even in late night's coziest friendships, there were lines not to cross, especially on live TV. "I've never had anything to do with sex and that sort of thing. Oliver, that's Don't Do This. Don't do this film. Well, you should see the cows." 3. Oliver Reed, the interview that became a warning story. British actor Oliver Reed already had a name for wild acts and heavy drinking way before his 1975 Tonight Show visit. But when he got to NBC's Burbank studios to plug the movie Royal Flash, few could guess how badly his chat would go wrong. From the second Reed walked on stage, it was obvious something was off. His walk was wobbly, his eyes not focused, and when he sat next to Carson, the smell of booze was so strong crew could smell it from far away. "He came to plug a movie and burned his own career," said a Tonight Show worker who saw it. "We had handled guests who'd had some drinks before, but Reed was way worse. You could see Carson knew right away he was in trouble. Carson, always the pro, tried to lead Reed through normal plug questions about the movie, but Reed's answers soon went into mess. He slurred words, cut Carson off a lot, and got more mean when the host tried to steer talk back. What made the part super awkward was Reed's sudden mood changes. 1 second charming, next angry. He switched between trying to tell long, mixed-up stories and out of nowhere hitting Carson with mean questions that broke the show's normal talk flow. Carson had an amazing skill for handling tough guests, but even he had limits, said a longtime NBC boss. You could see him thinking fast. How long could this part go on? How could he stop it without making it worse? It was like watching a chess pro see he's in a losing game. The audience reaction changed as the part went on. First laughs at Reed's weird acts turned to nervous laughs, then quiet as it was clear they were seeing a guy whose drinking had gone from funny to worrying. Carson finally cut the part short. A rare thing for a host who was proud of never making guests look bad no matter what. The thing became famous in Tonight's Show history, with Carson reportedly telling producers after, "Let's not do that again." For Reed, the visit had big, lasting effects. Already having trouble breaking big in Hollywood despite UK success, his act on America's top talk show pretty much killed his shot at US fame. Studios, already careful about his rep now, had video proof of the risks of hiring him. The part now lives as both showbiz legend and warning story. A reminder that even the most controlled TV setting can fall apart when a guest shows up not ready to meet basic behavior rules. And they were on the gallows, each one of them, for over 20 minutes before their hearts stopped beating. I mean, it's a really an unbelievably horrendous thing to watch. It must be for Truman Capote, literary genius to late-night problem. When writing star Truman Capote showed up on The Tonight Show in 1980, he brought his smarts and his troubles. By then, the writer of In Cold Blood and Breakfast at Tiffany's was deep into drug and drink problems that would later help cause his death, a fact that showed clearly in his bad chat with Carson. From Th. Second Capote sat in the guest chair, viewers could tell something was wrong. His speech was slurred, his moves jumpy, and his thoughts hard to follow. Carson, himself a smart guy who really liked writers, tried hard to lead Capote to normal talk, but the writer seemed set on messing every question up. From writing legend to late-night problem, said a writer who worked for Carson then. Johnny had huge respect for Capote's books and wanted to give him a chance to show his smarts. Instead, we got a guy who could hardly put sentences together, making weirder and weirder statements that had the control room panicking. What made the visit super awkward was Capote's push to talk spicy topics, making odd, not okay comments about politics and sex that broke the show's family-friendly rules. Many times, Carson tried to shift to safer stuff, only for Capote to go back to hot topics. The audience, hoping for smart writer talk from one of America's top authors, instead saw something more like weird art. Capote rambling without sense, sometimes flashing his famous sharp jokes before going back to nonsense. Carson was super patient, said a camera guy from that night. With most guests like that, he would have ended it early. But I think he kept hoping Capote would suddenly get clear and be the great talker he could be. That never happened. Though Carson never badmouthed Capote after, the writer never got asked back to The Tonight Show. A big sign from a host who usually gave troubled guests another shot. The visit marked a sad point in Capote's public fall, giving TV watchers a look at how far the once sharp people watcher had dropped. What made the thing extra sad was the difference between Capote's earlier Carson visits, where he wowed with smart comments and book insights, and this last messy chat. For fans of Capote's books, the gap between his great writing and his messy TV self was heartbreaking. The part stands as one of late-night TV's most awkward yet gripping moments. A short look into the personal fights of a writing giant caught live for a country audience that could only watch in confused pity as smarts turned into mess. "This house is 300 years old, and my mother said, 'But you expect me to live in it with a baby?' Nobody. Okay, I got it on next time. You got to go to the theater." 5. Shelley Winters, Hurricane in a Dress. Oscar-winning actress Shelley Winters came on The Tonight Show many times during Carson's years, each visit unpredictable in its way. But one visit in particular went from fun unpredictability to real mess when Winters turned a normal star panel into a yelling fight that even left Carson looking shaken. Winters was already known for her big energy and habit of taking over talks. But on this famous night, she came with complaints to let out and no filter to hold them. What started as normal Carson chat quickly got worse when another guest on the couch, said to be another known actress, though stories differ on who, said something Winters took as an insult. She didn't just lose it, she wrecked the part, said a Tonight Show producer. One minute they were having a normal, if lively, talk, and the next Shelley was standing, pointing, and making the kind of scene you just didn't see on Carson's controlled show. Winters started a rant, her voice getting loud as she yelled not just at the other guest, but about unfair stuff in Hollywood, how older actresses get treated, and lots of complaints that seemed built up for years. The audience, used to Carson's usually calm vibe, went into shocked quiet. What made the moment extra awkward was Carson's clear, bugged look, a rare crack in his usual calm self. While he usually handled tough guests with jokes and soft steers, Winters's blow-up pushed him to where even his famous patience started to break. Johnny had a sign when he was really annoyed. He would shuffle papers on his desk and look at Ed McMahon, said a long-time Tonight Show staffer. During Shell's meltdown, he was basically making paper art with his cards. It was his way of yelling help. Without saying it, after many tries to calm things failed, Carson finally used his big move, calling for a commercial. This hardly used last resort was Carson's way to stop a part gone totally wild. When the show came back from break, Winters was calmer a bit, but the feel stayed tense for the rest. Behind the scenes, Carson reportedly told producers, "Let's space out her next visit." Carson talk for a break time. What's cool about Winters's link with The Tonight Show is that even with this and other wild visits, she kept getting asked back. A sign of both her star pull and Carson's get that sometimes wild unpredictability made great TV, even when it went past comfort lines. Carson once called Winters a force of nature you can't control. "You can only point it," said a TV history guy. That night she was totally loose and crashing across his neat set. It was TV at its most awkwardly real. "You were talking about William Demarest. Yeah, I have a story with dirty words in it to tell about him. He's coming. You can't do that. I can't. But instead of the dirty words, I could just say blank blank. 6. Buddy Hackett, when the funny man got serious." Comedian Buddy Hackett was one of Carson's most dependable guests. A storyteller whose lively tales and big laugh had made him a Tonight Show fave for years. His visits usually went a set way. Hackett would sit, Carson would give little pushes, and the comedian would start long, often super funny stories that left host and audience laughing hard. But on one remembered night in the mid-1970s, something else happened. Hackett came seeming upset by off-camera stuff, and what started as his usual funny tales took a sudden dark turn. Even Johnny's calm face broke, said an NBC page in the studio that night. Hackett started normal, but then went into a rant about Hollywood people he felt had hurt him. It wasn't funny mad like his normal stories. It was real bitter and more personal. What made the part extra awkward was how it broke the hidden deal between Carson and his comedian guests. Be fun, be funny, but don't use the spot to settle old fights. As Hackett kept naming certain producers and bosses he called fakes and backstabbers. Carson's face went from happy to worried to clear unease. The audience reaction showed it. The usual steady laughs in a Hackett visit turned to spotty, unsure laughs, then long quiets as the comedian's complaints got sharper and personal. Carson tried a few times to steer him with questions about future work or light stuff, said a Tonight Show staff writer, but Hackett was set on using his time to let out complaints. It was like watching someone use a comedy spot for venting, raw and real, but totally wrong for the show's vibe. After many failed tries to get talk back to safe, Carson had to go to commercial early, a rare sign of how far past the show's comfort Hackett had gone. When they came back, Carson smoothly went to another part, basically cutting Hackett's time short. Backstage from staff stories, Carson was more puzzled than mad. Really worried about Hackett's state while also bugged that a usually solid guest had broken format so bad. "Something's bothering Buddy," Carson reportedly told his producer. "Let's check on him before booking again." What makes the thing stand out in Tonight Show history is that it came from Hackett, not a new limit pusher or troubled star, but one of Carson's most trusted regulars. It showed how even the strongest ties could suddenly break on live TV when personal stuff spilled into workspace. Hackett did come back to The Tonight Show later years, his usual funny self back, but the thing stayed a reminder of how fast even Carson's neat setup could change when a guest stopped following the hidden rules. 7. Red Fox, the walkout that made history. Comedian Red Fox was already a TV star from his lead role in Sanford and Son when he came on The Tonight Show in 1975. What should have been a normal plug visit instead became one of the shortest and most talked-about guest spots in show history when Fox suddenly walked off after less than 2 minutes on air. The trouble started before Fox even sat. A big smoker known for lighting up all the time off camera. Fox thought he'd be allowed to smoke during his Tonight Show spot, like it used to be okay in earlier TV years. But by 1975, NBC had stricter rules about smoking on set. One question, one blow-up, one unforgettable exit, said a production helper who saw it. Fox came out, said quick hellos with Johnny, and then right away asked if he could smoke. When told no, his whole mood changed fast. What home viewers saw was amazing in how short and strong it was. After Carson nicely explained smoking wasn't allowed on set, Fox got clearly upset, saying he couldn't do a chat without a cigarette. Carson, thinking Fox was kidding, like comedians often did on topics, laughed soft and tried to keep the chat going. Fox, though, was totally serious. He stood up, said something like, "Then I can't do this," and walked off stage, leaving Carson alone on set with a face that mixed surprise, confusion, and realizing this wasn't a joke, but a real walkout on live TV. Carson called it the shortest Tonight Show visit ever, said a longtime NBC boss. What made it so shocking wasn't just that Fox left, but how fast it went from normal to bad. There was no slow build, no signs, just a sudden break in the usual show flow. Carson, always the pro, got back fast with a joke about Fox's quick leave before going to next part. But backstage from staff stories, he was really shocked by what happened. Carson hardly took such things personal, but the sudden and public way Fox left was a rare hit to his host power. The aftermath was quick. Fox's people soon called Carson's team to fix it, saying the comedian had misunderstood the smoking rule and acted on impulse. While Son publicly stayed classy in later shows, joking about it instead of bashing Fox. The hurt to their work link was done. Fox did come back to the show years later, said a TV history guy. But there was always some tension in his later visits. It was like both guys remembered that public break and worked hard to not let it happen again, making a forced nice that never quite felt like Carson's easy vibe with fave guests. The thing lives on in Tonight Show stories as an example of how fast TV's neat setups can fall when a simple mix-up hits a strong personality on live TV, making a moment of real surprise in a world usually full of planned stuff. The man behind the desk, Carson's control and chaos. These 7 big moments show more than just stars acting bad. They give rare looks into the amazing control Johnny Carson kept over his TV world, and what happened in the rare times that control slipped. For 30 years, Carson made a space where stars felt both comfy and limited. His skill was in making the hard job of late-night hosting look easy, making it seem like he was just chatting casual when really he was running tightly planned parts meant to show guests at their best while keeping the show's steady feel. When guests like Madonna or Rickles messed that careful balance, whether on purpose to provoke or by impulse crossing lines, viewers saw something rare in Carson's world. Real surprise. These moments stand out exactly because they were so uncommon in a show usually known for smooth running. What's maybe most telling about these things is Carson's reactions to them. Unlike today's hosts who might play up awkward for viral hits or extra buzz, Carson was from an older TV time that put pro behavior first. When faced with really tough spots, his gut was always to protect the guest, even at their worst, keep the show's nice tone and fix order fast as possible. Carson saw himself as the audience's friend, said a former Tonight Show producer. If a guest was fun, he'd give them space to shine. If they were crossing lines that bugged viewers, he'd step in, not to make more drama, but to calm it. That's the opposite of what many modern hosts might do. This protecting gut went even to guests who had really messed his show. Carson hardly banned stars forever, no matter how bad they acted. With few exceptions, Madonna one of them, most got second shots, though often with longer waits and more careful checks before. The Tonight Show under Carson ran with a hidden code that host and guests got. Be fun, be real up to a point, but never forget the main goal was to make steady good TV instead of shocking stuff. When guests broke this code, the tension made some of the show's most remembered parts. Not because Carson wanted these moments, but exactly because he worked so hard to stop them. In today's split media world, where shocking star acts can turn straight into valuable online buzz, Carson's way seems almost old-fashioned. He wasn't chasing viral clips or hot takes. He was building a TV tradition meant to relax America before bed, night after night, year after year. The rare times when this neat front cracked, when Red Fox stormed off, when Oliver Reed slurred words, when Shelley Winters blew up in anger, stand out in Carson's 3 decades exactly because they were exceptions to his amazing, steady run. They show the few times when TV's most controlled space gave in a bit to the unpredictable side of people, making unplanned realness in a world often full of fake. This